Hey everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again today to talk about Q Squared, what I'm calling the grand finale to the Peter David book trek that we've been on all this summer. It has been a fun ride. He has written an incredible amount of just wonderful Trek books, and I feel that we really ordered it quite well because, in my opinion, we ended it on what was the best one for me. So, Q Squared. Let's kind of jump right into it here. The cover, of course, the cover is by Keith Birdsong, so you can see you've got Q, Picard, and Trelane, and some bit of sword fighting going on here at the top. So let's see. From the back, we've got a quote here, or a kind of an excerpt from the book. Q, I want to talk to you alone. Q smiled briefly at his companion, the entity called Trelane, and then gestured grandly in the direction of the captain's ready room. Picard strode briskly through the door. Q was right behind him. But the moment the door hissed shut, Q grabbed Picard by the uniform front. His usual smug facade had evaporated to be replaced by desperation. Picard, he said low and intense, you've got to help me. What? Was all Picard could get out. With what? With who? With Trelane. He's driving me nuts. I can't take it anymore. And Picard did something that he had never done before. He laughed in Q's face. So that's an interesting way to grab the reader right off the bat there, right? So let's get into the... We'll just take the dust jacket off here. Now, from the inside. Continuing the best-selling tradition begun by Star Trek hardcovers like Spock's World, Imzadi, Best Destiny, and The Devil's Heart, Pocket Books is proud to present the newest epic adventure starring Captain Picard and the crew of the USS Enterprise NCC 1701D. Star Trek The Next Generation Q Squared by Peter David. In all his travels, Captain Picard has never encountered an opponent more powerful than Q, a being from another continuum that Picard met on his very first mission as captain of the Starship Enterprise. In the years since, Q has returned again and again to harass Picard and crew, sometimes dangerous, sometimes merely obnoxious. Q has always been mysterious and seemingly all-powerful. But this time, when Q appears, he comes to Picard for help. Apparently, another member of the Q Continuum has tapped into an awesome power source that makes this being more powerful than the combined might of the entire Q Continuum. This renegade Q is named Trelane, also known as the Squire of Gothos, whom Captain Kirk and his crew first encountered over 100 years ago. Q explains that armed with this incredible power, Trelane has become unspeakably dangerous. Now Picard must get involved in an awesome struggle between super beings, and this time the stakes are not just Picard's ship, or the galaxy, or even the universe. This time the stakes are all of creation. Picard always saving the whole universe, right? If you guys didn't know, Peter David is a prolific author, having written over 24 novels, including the popular Next Generation titles Vendetta, Q-in-Law, and Imzadi, and a variety of comics including Hulk and X-Factor. A longtime New York resident, David lives there with his wife of 16 years, Myra, whom he met at a Star Trek convention, and their 3 children, Shanna, Genevieve, and Ariel. And of course, we've got a lovely picture here. Oh, there you are, of Mr. David. So, the book itself is very nice, a nice purple color here, with the black binding on the edge. So again, hardcovers are always fun. I made a little bit of a mess of this one, but hey, it's my book, who cares? So anyway, we'll get the dust jacket back on, and we will get a little bit more into this one. So now we want to find out a little bit more, about Q Squared. So we pick up the old Voyages of the Imagination, and we do have a fairly good excerpt here from Peter David. So, Peter remarked, Q Squared was the result of the sales of Q-in-Law. The concept of whether Trelane was a Q or not came from the TNG episode Encounter at Farpoint. The moment Q showed up, I immediately thought he was like Trelane. A number of fans felt the same way. I don't remember what prompted me to do the various dimensions, but I can tell you it was the most insane thing that I've ever done. So I like this part too. So in this book, um, basically it kind of splits off into various different alternate realities, right? So what he's saying here is that he came up with the idea, but then didn't come up with a good way to keep Picard A, Picard B, and Picard C separate. So it gave him a little bit of trouble when he was, going through the writing process. But honestly, in the end, for the reader, there's no trouble figuring out who is who. It's all pretty clear. So he found a good way without labeling them A, B, C for you to know exactly who you're dealing with, right? So now, um, this is like I said, it was a perfect ending to all of this because I feel he takes kind of all the previous everything that he did and kind of throws it all together here. In particular, I'm thinking of IQ too. I read that one just before this one, and of course what was the other one here? Anyway, but it really is just a combination of like everything that kind of comes together to make this one kind of grand finale here at the end. So now, it is a bit of it's a crazy ride, right? Because you are constantly shifting between this dimension, and this dimension, and it is it is so well done and so I know for me kind of fascinating too, because I am a big fan of this kind of story. For me it was kind of like a what if story. So you're getting all of these various different things that could have or did happen in these alternate universes, right? And then the whole story basically is also this kind of it reminded me of, I don't know if anyone else watched or remembers, it's been a while, how at the end of Picard season 3, Q is describing how like the Q are not present in time like how we normally are, right? So things kind of go backwards and forwards, and there's a lot of interesting things in this book that I think are kind of like that too, where you're seeing the result of something at the beginning, and then later into the book is when they actually show you the how that happened, right? So it's like anyway, just like the the word I'm trying to say escapes me, but the order in which the events happen in the book is kind of out of order because that is the way that the Q experience time, right? So you're having, for instance, like at one point Q gets destroyed at one point, and then he kind of comes back, and there's this whole long section there where anyway it's an incredible amount of I don't know world building, right, for this the whole Q continuum, for this just how they operate, right? And I think that it also just fits very well in with canon knowledge of what we know of the continuum, right? And even so far as to the latest episode of Strange New Worlds, right? This book even kind of validates what happens in the latest episode there. So, I mean, that was fantastic. Now, I would say, before you read this, watch the TOS episode, right? That's going to get you fully familiar with the character, right? And then maybe after you read it, watch the Strange New Worlds episode, which I'm actually going to do later, because I know after reading this, it kind of makes me want to go back and watch that episode again, just to kind of pick up on some more of kind of what's going on there. So anyway, I can't recommend this book enough. So if you're looking to pick up just a fantastic Star Trek book, and if you're a big fan of Q, this book is for you, right? Now, if you don't want to be spoiled, you can exit now and come back later to talk about more Star Trek stuff. But we are going to get into some of more of the details. And this is, you'll see, the last page in the old Star Trek journal here. So after that, we just got an index. So we'll be starting a new one. Amazing. Now, this was very cool too, and I want to point this out. I always love when we find things like this, and don't tell me it fell out. I don't know what's in here. So, anytime you buy old used books, there's always a chance you're going to find somebody else's old notes in there. So, I thought that was very cool. Can't really make that out very well, but there they are. This basically is kind of breaking down the characters from the 3 different dimensions. So kind of someone else taking their own little notes. So I'm going to leave that in there. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. When you see like little notes like that, when you see somebody's name on something, all of that stuff is very, very cool. So, all right, let's get right into it. So again, the book starts out with Q kind of coming to Picard for help. He's got to teach Trelane a few things. He's kind of being the mentor for Trelane, right? And then as the book progresses, again, it splits the board. It splits into these different tracks. And again, Peter David does a great job here with this kind of train theme as far as how the different universes go, right? So the book starts out with all aboard, right? And then you've got these different tracks, and it goes track A, track B, so you kind of know where you're at all the time. Track A is an alternate universe where Jack Crusher did not die. And he is now the captain of the Enterprise D, and Picard is his first officer, having kind of lost the confidence of, command after the loss of the Stargazer, right? And since Crusher is alive, Crusher is the one that ends up performing the Crusher maneuver and kind of, takes his place there. So there's a lot of interesting things about this timeline. In this timeline, Wesley fell out of a tree and died as a young boy. So he split up from Beverly. Beverly is Beverly Howard, but she comes on board the ship as the new medical officer anyway. And it turns out there's a little bit of a thing between her and Picard. So that's kind of the drama and the story going on track A. Track B, this is your typical Enterprise, right? The normal Enterprise. And then you've got all of your normal... Wait, am I saying that? Yeah, track B. It's the typical one. And this is where Q is trying to teach Trelane. And you've got your... kind of like your basic Q episode almost here, right? And then you have track C, which they kind of get into later, which is a variation of the Yesterday's Enterprise universe. But instead of them rescuing the Enterprise C, they arrive too late and they have to destroy the ship. So this is again a militaristic Federation who's at war with the Klingon. So here's your 3 different universes, right? And now Trelane has basically, one of the versions of Trelane, right, has... See, again, this is where this book is so crazy, because there's this kind of like, when did this happen? Was it in the future? Was it in the past? Is it yet to happen kind of thing? But anyway, he basically taps into the heart of chaos, right? And he uses this power then to start messing with these 3 universes, which is how, in the end of the book, he actually gets his name, Tree Lane, because he's messing with these 3 different universes, right? So that was kind of a cool little thing too they threw in the end. And again, just the fact of like the beginning is before the end and the end is before the, it's just very, very interesting there. So anyway, so you've got the 3 different universes set up here, and you've got a bit of drama going on in each one. And Trelane now is kind of making the chaos more and more and more and more and more, right? And he is kind of I don't know, pulling the strings of everybody and just kind of making things even more chaotic. So, a couple of the interesting things about the different universes. The Track A universe, of course, this is with Captain Crusher. Riker was captured by Cardassians years ago. So, in the beginning of this universe, they have a scene showing Worf, who's just a regular Klingon warrior. He was never in Starfleet in this universe. He rescues Kira, who doesn't show up again, and Riker from the Cardassian torture, right? And then kind of delivers him to Deanna. And in this universe, they have a young son named Tommy. And also, interestingly enough, Data is a humanoid, not an android. So he is a organic body with a positronic brain. So that's like the little difference there, right? So you have these three different universes, and like again, Trelane's kind of pulling the strings in all of them, making things get crazy. And then as they get closer to the end, he starts pushing everything together. And it starts out kind of subtle, where there's a scene where Picard is looking in the mirror and he sees his alternate version of himself, right? But then eventually, in the kind of like the final sequence of the whole book called Derailment, all three come together, and you have this just very chaotic scene where, well, first off, of course, because the Universe C Starfleet are at war with the Klingons, when they get into the universe that has Worf there, they are like going crazy, going on the attack, and they think that basically the Klingons have taken over the ship. In Universe A, Jack Crusher finds out about the affair between Picard and Beverly Howard, and thanks to Trelane keeping to pull the strings, he basically sends him over the edge, you know? So you got crazy Jack Crusher trying to kill Picard in that universe. You've got the Universe C Starfleet people chasing after Worf, and then also thinking that the doubles of them are like Klingon agents or something like that, right? So it all comes together in this very chaotic ending, where eventually, eventually, it all comes down to basically Picard. Um, they get to this planet, and of course, the planet has been like this whole creation by Trelane anyway. It's called Terminus, and they get there, and Q kind of is at this point he's been destroyed by Trelane, but he's slowly brought himself back together, and now Picard is going to be the one to kind of initiate the end, right? And oh, I forgot to mention too that while Trelane is causing the chaos and bringing all these universes together, he's playing the harpsichord. So I thought it was fitting. I put on some. You can actually find there's like a playlist called like Trelane's favorite, and it was a fun way to finish the book with this kind of harpsichord music. And as Peter David described it, as the chaos went on, the playing got crazier and faster and louder and like that. So that was a very cool way to do that, and just to add that into the for the reader, you know, to have that kind of going on in the background while you have all this action. You can picture him down on the planet just wailing away on this thing, right? Well, anyway, Picard goes down to the planet and he challenges him to a sword fight, and the basically the story ends on this epic sword fight between Picard and Trelane, where you know it looks like Trelane's about to win, but then Picard pulls this sweet move, sticks him, and it turns out that the sword was Q the whole time. And it was kind of cool. And then basically because he was able to stab into Trelane with the Q sword, Q was able to use his powers to, you know, destroy that version of Trelane. But then at the end, like the Trelane comes back anyway, and it's in the form, you know, like this kind of coalesced energy form that you know kind of picture them as when you see them at the end of like that Strange New Worlds episode, or even the end of like the original series episode, right? So anyway, just a very wonderful journey, and like this weird circle again, where the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning, and it all just kind of came around and went around in a very perfect and fun way. So Bravo to Peter David again. What a fun summer of reading this has been. Just you know, next thing I got to do, I got to take a little bit of a break, but we got to get into the New Frontier stuff. That's the only untouched Peter David stuff that I have left, and it's going to be a fun adventure when we get into the rest of that. But as for today, that's all for Q Squared. Thanks for hanging out and listening. As always, my friends, live long and prosper, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.